you all so much for joining us this evening. Of course, you know me as your commissioner. I am Lorraine Cochran-Johnson. I represent Super District 7, but I represent all of DeKalb. Of course, this evening we're here to talk to you because, of course, I receive tons of emails daily. And with the passing of the new $900 billion stimulus package, there has been a lot of questions concerning the dissemination of those funds. Also, what is included within those funds. So this evening, we are going to dissect those issues that are most important to our residents here in DeKalb County. And I have a very distinguished panel here to join me in that conversation. So at this time, I am going to move into introductions. And our next is no stranger, Ms. Terry Dennison. She is the Georgia District Director for the U.S. Small Business Administration. She has been with us before and is an absolute wealth of knowledge. And thank you so much, because I know, Ms. Dennison, that you are extremely busy at this moment. But Terry is the Georgia District Director for the U.S. Small Business Administration. In this role since May of 2002, she is responsible for overseeing the implementation of the SBA's financial, counseling, training, and small business development programs for small businesses throughout Georgia. Terry began her SBA career in 1987 as the Presidential Management Fellow at the agency's Washington, D.C. district and headquarter offices. Other positions included working with the agency's Minority Enterprise Development and One-Stop Capital Shop programs and the Office of Field Operations. Terry has also served as the SBA Indiana Director, Deputy Director, and Acting District Director in Wisconsin. A native of Corpus Christi, Texas, Terry holds a BA degree in American Government from Cornell University and an MA degree in Urban Studies from Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas. She is also a graduate of the Federal Executive Institute in Charlottesville, Virginia. Prior to her SBA career, Terry worked as the pro bono coordinator at the Neighborhood Legal Services of Tompkins County, New York, and graduate intern at the City of San Antonio's Department of Economic and Employment Development. Thank you so much for joining us, Terry. Next, we will introduce Mr. Morani. Many of you know Fariz Morani. He has participated with us in other seminars. He is an absolute wealth of knowledge, and I'm very proud to say that he is a business owner in Super District 7. Fariz is the CEO of Access Loans and Financing, a DeKalb County-based mortgage lender founded in 2011 with the goal of helping individuals in communities own their dream homes. Fariz has helped hundreds of families with financing needs and has assisted them in transitioning from apartment renting to home ownership. Through the purchase of larger homes, the families Fariz has assisted has improved their quality of life by sending their children to better schools and providing them with the space to grow. Fariz is not only passionate about helping families with new homes, but also has knowledge in gaining assisting families with lowering their monthly mortgage payments. Fariz has lived in DeKalb County most of his life and loves to serve his community. That he does, and thank you again, Fariz. I appreciate your presence here this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Last but not least, we have a new face, but an individual who has been extremely busy and on the front line as it relates to housing, and that is Miss Angela Rossetti. Angela is the managing attorney of Atlanta Legal Aid's DeKalb County office. She has worked for Atlanta Legal Aid for 17 years, practicing in the areas of domestic relations, landlord-tenant, consumer law, and bankruptcy. Angela resides in the Midway Woods neighborhood with her spouse and various animals. And Angela, there's a lot to be said for an individual who keeps it short. So Thank you so much, because that old adage is very true. It doesn't matter how much you know until people know how much you care. And that you have demonstrated through your work consistently. And I consider you one of the angels of DeKalb. So thank you all so much for joining us this evening. At this time, I found a video clip that does a really good job of giving a synopsis of what the $900 billion stimulus package looks like from an aerial view. And then we will take a deep dive. So at this time, Allison, if you would begin the play.
Just ahead of the holidays, help is on the way, with Congress ready to vote as soon as today on a massive pandemic relief plan after months of gridlock.
The agreement on this package could be summed up by
the $900 billion deal includes checks for many Americans. People making less than $75,000 a year will get $600, or $1,200 for couples making less than $150,000, plus $600 for any child in the family. That adds up to $2,400 for the average family of four. The package gives an additional $300 a week in unemployment benefits and provides $325 billion in help for small businesses, including an extension of the Paycheck Protection Program. There's nearly $70 billion for vaccine distribution and testing, more than $80 billion for schools, and $25 billion to help renters, too. The deal also keeps the government funded until next fall. If Congress passes this, it would be the second biggest stimulus package ever, behind only the first round of pandemic relief earlier this year.
At long last, we have the bipartisan breakthrough.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now, why did I feel that was important? And if we can just continue rolling our slides, because we have a lot of questions that have been submitted, and I want to ensure that we are able to get through them all. I felt that it was important to show the aerial view, but also for many on this line, there are a lot of people throughout DeKalb County that are in need of assistance. And for us here on the municipal level, we, in many instances, we are not able to disseminate until that money has been drawn down to us on the local level. I wanted to share this in a very open format because each commissioner was given an allocation of $1.4 million from the initial $125 million that was received during the initial allocation of CARES Act funding. And what you see here is a breakdown of the dissemination of the funds that I received. You can see here that Operation Hope, some of you on this call may be a part of the entrepreneurial incubator that I instituted with them, because out of the initial funding, $10 million was set aside for small business growth, stabilization, and COVID relief. However, we were only able to allocate slightly over 5 million of those funds because individuals either did not apply or in many instances did not meet the minimum qualifications. So as your commissioner, it's important to me that you are able to do business in DeKalb, that your business functions properly so that you have access to resources when we make them available to you. So that incubator will be ending, I believe, in about 2 weeks. And for those who received my newsletter, of course, I made the announcement in the newsletter and it was open to everyone. It was an 8-week program. The IRC, the International Rescue Committee, if many of you received a COVID vaccine in the city of Clarkston at the community center, that $240,000 that I spent went there to ensure that there was easy access to all DeKalb residents who desired COVID testing. The Atlanta Food Bank very much speaks to itself to combat food insecurities, but this allocation was specifically for veterans. Art Station in the city of Stone Mountain, because the Art Station is the core of their economy. And the artists in that area found it very difficult to move forward. Clarkston Community Health. As a result of COVID, over 27 million Americans are uninsured. Clarkston Community Health is truly our indigent care facility. So I wanted to ensure that they had the resources to provide for anyone who is a resident of DeKalb County who is in need of medical assistance. It is 100% free of charge. All of the other allocations literally were utilized, or these organizations served as pass-through to provide funding for rent, mortgage, utility, and food stabilization and assistance. If we can move forward to the next slide very quickly, okay? This is what we're here to talk about tonight. What I did was a very detailed breakdown of the things that matters most out of this package to the average DeKalb County resident. $600 in stimulus checks have gone out. We'll talk about that a little later. There was an extension of $300 per week in unemployment and enhanced jobless benefits. Those benefits will actually go through March 31st. $325 billion in small business relief through PPE. And of course, Ms. Dennison from the SBA will discuss how those funds are being allocated and how you can go about accessing them. $69 billion in vaccine distribution and testing. We have already begun round 1A plus of vaccines here in the county. We held a separate town hall on the vaccine because, of course, there was a lot of challenges. We did not receive the allotment of vaccines that we expected, nor did the Department of Public Health expect to be the primary distributor of vaccines. So there has been some challenges there to overcome. $82 billion for schools and $25 billion for renters. So if we can go to, I believe, our next slide. I'm just going to dive at this point directly into the questions that we have received, because I want to ensure that we answer as many as humanly possible. And I am going to start first with Angela. Of course, Angela, we have extended the moratorium concurrently with what has happened on the federal level. Because of course, though, the ability to extend that moratorium is totally at the jurisdiction of the municipalities. But we will not enforce evictions at this point until March 31st. But there are a lot of people out there who have not been able to, of course, pay their rent. And I would like for you to talk to them specifically concerning how to go about coming out of this pandemic as best possible, utilizing what we currently have in place on the federal level.
So at this time, as far as rental assistance goes, and
Absolutely.
okay. I mean, at this time, a lot of the agencies that we've partnered with for rental assistance reach the end of their CARES Act funding. A lot of them do have their own separate amounts of rental assist that they always have. So Decatur Cooperative Ministry is a good place. Star C, Salvation Army. These are some of the agencies I know may still be able to provide direct assistance. And of course, I mean, we're also at the DeKalb County Office of Legal Aid. We're keeping a list of clients who call us regarding eviction or a notice to quit that they've received from landlord. If they're behind and they're in need of rental assistance, we're keeping track of those folks so that when we're aware of more funding coming, we're able to immediately have a navigator get in touch with them so that we can make sure that they're not lost and that they're directed to rental assistance as soon as we know of more. But it's also very important, if you have been served with an eviction, especially, that you make sure that you go through the court process, and so that you don't lose any of your rights. If you're served with an eviction, you have to file an answer within 7 days. If you don't, then you may be subject to eviction more quickly than if you don't do that. So you can, I mean, that way you can preserve your rights, and maybe when funding becomes available, you'll have a better chance of being able to work something out with the landlord.
Absolutely. And that's very important, Ms. Rossetti, the fact that if you are served with an eviction notice, do follow the due process of law. As it currently stands in DeKalb County, we will not actively enforce any evictions prior to March 31st. And I'd like to be very clear in saying that the pipeline of current evictions is so great that even with that enforcement beginning, we would be, I would believe, months away in many instances from reaching you per se. But for an individual that is experiencing difficulty, I do appreciate you pointing out, Ms. Rossetti, that here in DeKalb, when we received our individual appropriations, as well as the administration through the CEO's office, and we provided funding to nonprofits to serve as an intermediary, literally any individual who desired assistance, if you could provide documentation related to your rent or your mortgage, then we made direct payments to your lien holder or to other agencies, your rental office, to cover any deficit you may have. By and large, we have expended all of those funds. So we are now waiting, just as many of you on this call, for our aid to reach us from the federal level. So again, it's very important that you understand the position we're in, because until those monies are drawn down to us, we cannot disseminate them to our local residents to assist with what they may need. So I urge you to ensure that you are receiving my newsletter, county updates, because once those funds are available, you will see us begin to disseminate them out to nonprofit organizations that will serve as partners who can get those monies into your hands to help you during this very difficult time. Would you like to add anything additional, Ms. Rossetti?
Just to say that, yes, the county moved expeditiously to process those funds and get them into the hands. I mean, and that was why we and other agencies were able to provide a lot of rental assistance and help to folks, because the county moved quickly to move a lot of money in a short period of time to get
Absolutely.
it to help them.
And let me say, I see one question here that asks, is the relief bill based on credit? It is not based on credit, but the stimulus check is based on household income. I want to be very clear of that. It is an income generated distribution, but it is not based on credit. If an individual has need and it can be demonstrated, then you do have the ability to draw down funds. Let's see here. I'm multitasking, so we are continuing with questions. And this particular question goes directly to Ms. Dennison with the SBA. I did notice a question, or no, more of a statement in the chat concerning why the SBA is not doing more. I would say that based upon what I understand, and let me be very clear, anyone that reaches out to the office, I always take you through the process, open the necessary doors to assist you with whatever funding or assistance you may need. But the individual must qualify, because there are always terms and conditions for the assistance that we are able to provide. So at this time, for small business owners who may be a part of this conversation, this question states, I'm a small business owner. How can I apply for Paycheck Protection Program assistance? And Ms. Dennison, I'm going to ask you to share with them how to go about applying?
Yes, good evening, everyone. The Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, follows what I call our regular lending model, in that we're not the direct lender of the funds. You would go to a participating lender in the program, submit the application, and then SBA comes on the back end and guarantees the loan. And then, of course, if the loan is ultimately forgiven, which is the goal of PPP, then SBA will reimburse the lender for the forgiven loan. So that's where we come in on the back end. In terms of the types of lenders that are available, one of the things we've tried to do in this round is to really emphasize the role and encourage the participation of what we call community financial institutions, such as your community development financial institutions, minority depository institutions, micro lenders, or entities that participate in one of SBA's programs called certified development companies. So these tend to be nonprofit, mission-oriented lenders that would tend to have their clientele, or to serve what we would consider traditionally underserved markets, such as minority-owned, women-owned, urban, rural located businesses. And there's been much emphasis on setting aside funds specifically to support those smaller loans, say 150 and under, and those various populations. So the key would be to work with one of those lenders. You can go to our website, sba.gov/PPP, and that will go more into detail as to the two variations, for first-time PPP borrowers and those who may have gotten a loan under the program in the first round, but require additional funds. Our resource partners are there to also help with that process of preparing to meet with those lenders.
And let me say, because I really want to break this down totally for those that are participating. I see a comment here, but PPP loans require wages in order to qualify. I want us to speak to that, but I also want to say that with the funds that we made available through the county, it was called a hybrid program. Why hybrid? Because in order to qualify, there were certain stipulations. You must demonstrate that you have utilized this money for COVID relief, for business expansion as a result of COVID, to purchase PPE equipment or needed supplies. And at which time you demonstrate to us that you have utilized those resources in that way, the loan was thereafter forgiven. Okay. Now, if you received the money and you did what you chose and you did not supply proof, then there was a 1 or to 3% repayment assessed to it. For those that are in business, you probably understand that even fair market now, if you walk into a bank, you're looking at about, as general, and Mr. Morani, I'm sure you can speak to this, about 5% for an average business loan. Right. So these resources were at far below market rate, but a loan is just that. It is a loan, and it's designed to bridge a gap. The one thing that I can say that I see happening on the federal level is that this is evolving. And when I say evolving, I do not believe that there would be a repayment penalty, and this is my personal belief, or that an individual who demonstrated that they did not have the ability to repay would be placed in an adverse position. However, it is, the PPP program itself is a loan. So if you will, speak to the loan aspect and what an individual, if they decide to pursue PPP, can expect, Ms. Dennison.
Yes, there's a couple things in terms of the idea behind, well, I don't have wages, maybe as a sole proprietor or a self-employed individual. like an independent contractor, I don't qualify. First of all, there is guidance that was provided that allows the earnings of that sole proprietorship to count as wages. I think that's what some adjustments and clarifications that were provided as this issue came up initially with the program. So actually on that website that I mentioned, sba.gov/PPP, there is a document on how to calculate your PPP loan amount based on the type of entity that you are. So I would encourage people to take a look at that, and they probably can see that there is benefit to them as a sole proprietor independent contractor. Also, there's a variety of other purposes that you can use those PPP proceeds for. Okay, not only the rent for your business or the mortgage interest or utilities as initially laid out in the CARES Act, but under the latest legislation, they've added additional operational expenses in many cases can be covered with those proceeds, supplier payments, you acquiring the things you need to produce the good or service that you do, PPE and other adaptive steps you had to take to conform with safety and health requirements that state and local government was imposing as a result of the pandemic. So there's a broader use. If you can't get the loan forgiven, it's not a matter of, well, you are ineligible. It becomes a loan that you have to repay as opposed to it being forgiven. It's 1% interest. You would have 5 years to repay it with an initial period of deferment on payment. So definitely 1% is way below market rate. And that would be the outcome if it does not turn into a forgivable loan and you'd have to repay.
Absolutely. It appears that a lot of individuals are very concerned with the repayment, and understandably so, because no one, for a lack of better words, will stick their hand in a burning bush, because there's a great deal of uncertainty amongst many small business owners as to their future. But do be aware at this point, as it relates to PPP, it is a loan. There is one specific question here. Can the EIDL loans be forgiven?
No, they have a 30-year term. The interest rate for for-profit entities would be 3.75%, simple interest. You'd have a 1-year deferment period before you have to restart repayment. And you can prepay, early as things get better, hopefully, without penalty.
Understood. I'm going to go back to a question from Mr. Cheedy, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. And his question related to, has there been a meaningful change in the number of foreclosure filings in DeKalb County since the beginning of the pandemic? And is there a link between foreclosure filings and rental housing that's evident to anyone on this panel? I would venture to say, as it relates to, is there a link between foreclosure filings and rental housing? I'm not sure, honestly, Mr. Cheedy, if there is. There could be some correlation, but I'm not sure that it is a direct correlation. I do believe from time to time there may be some overlap. You also raise a question as to currently DeKalb County's Marshal Office has 25 officers. And in the event that we begin serving evictions, basically you're saying, what position are we in to enforce them? I'm not sure how early you joined them, but not to sound like an attorney, I do not practice, but that is a slippery slope. In that, we understand the magnitude, because our court system currently is so backlogged, because not only are we dealing with evictions, we're also dealing with general civil matters throughout the court system. So I do not believe that there would be a mad exodus of evictions at one point. Ms. Rossetti, do you have the most recent numbers And I know that my chief of staff is on the line as well as to how many evictions have been filed within DeKalb County.
I mean, I don't have those numbers, but I'm sure it's probably, I mean, around a couple of thousand.
When absolutely, and you know, to my understanding, I believe a number that I had most recently heard, Mr. Chidi, was well over 3,000.
Okay.
But you know, I don't want to, in a public in a setting or in any other, manufacture a response. So I do have direct access to you. So I will verify and follow up with you as to the amount of pending evictions here in DeKalb County. I'm going to now go back to our questions. There is one question here. I have already received PPP funding in the past. Am I eligible to apply again?
You can, and that under the newest legislation, you have two phases of PPP. The first draw, which is basically anyone who has not previously received a PPP loan, and then what they call a second draw PPP. For people who have shown, one, that they've had a decrease in their gross receipts when you compare comparable calendar quarters, you have at least a 25% decrease in gross receipts. And either you've used all your first PPP loan proceeds, or you will by the time that second loan is dispersed. If you are in a food and an accommodation type business in that industry, the formula allows you to get a little more of a second draw PPP loan than you would otherwise.
Thank you for answering that. There was another very meaningful question here that I'm going to go back to. I am a nonprofit. Can I receive PPP funding? Absolutely. And Ms. Dennison, again, I'm going to allow you to speak specifically to that particular question.
Yes, under the CARES Act, and then again under this most recent legislation, nonprofits are allowed to get PPP. That's different than how we operate with our regular business loan programs. They are not eligible under those programs, but under PPP, they are. And not only just nonprofits, secular nonprofits, but faith-based nonprofit organizations and even churches are eligible for PPP.
Okay, and thanks for sharing that. I have another question here related to how long does the unemployment benefits last? They were extended through March 31st. Is the new timeline. And again, as we've seen, this is the second round and the second stimulus package. I believe that on literally a quarterly and ongoing basis on the federal level, our elected officials must continue to monitor the outcome and where we are in the United States. And I don't expect that this will be our last stimulus allocation. However, I look forward to having it in hand. Now, here is a question. Working with legal aid, what areas of your service offerings have you seen an increase in, and what assistance are you providing them? So this is specifically for legal aid. What areas of service have you seen an increase in? Can you speak to that for us, please?
Yes, definitely.
Ms. Cassetti?
Yes. So unemployment has been the most overwhelming increase. We have seen a 1,200%, and that is not an exaggeration, that is exact, increase in the request for people calling us about issues related to unemployment in 2020 versus 2019. And so what we're doing a variety of things on that front. I mean, we've been working with folks to try to, because there have been so many issues that people have been trying to sort out. I mean, the backlog being the largest part, and also just being able to do things like verify your identity with the Department of Labor. That's been very tricky for folks. One of the most difficult double whammies of the pandemic that we've seen people face is the fact that because the offices of the Department of Labor are physically closed, people who don't have really good access to technology are at a disadvantage because they can't go in someplace and say, okay, I need to apply. They're trying to do it on their phones or with substandard technology and are running into barriers with that. So we've been working with people to try to work around that. The Department of Labor has given us an ability to connect with them through email on behalf of clients. So we've done a lot of that. And Legal Aid, along with a couple of other agencies, including the Southern Poverty Law Center, actually sued the Department of Labor, and they had oral arguments today in DeKalb County, basically asking the Department of Labor to please move these things faster. And so we're waiting to hear on that, because we know, I mean, and I think the department is doing what they can, but they have never seen an explosion of claims for unemployment like this. We've also at Legal Aid we have seen a definite increase in people calling us about landlord-tenant issues. Earlier in the pandemic, we had a lot of folks who were contacting us about issues with extended stay hotels, because at the traditional landlords were not filing evictions very early in the pandemic, but people who are living in more vulnerable situations were being, summarily evicted and put out. And so we were helping with that a great deal.
And thank you for that. And I'm looking forward to seeing the outcome from the oral arguments that took place today. And for those of you that are on this call, because I have received more emails than I care to recount, as well as calls from individuals who plain and simply cannot and have not, since the inception of this pandemic, received a reply to their request for unemployment benefits. That is absolutely shocking to one's conscience, that we are now 9 months or more into a pandemic, and you have individuals who have not received any unemployment compensation or benefits, besides the assistance that they've been able to find in local municipalities and through nonprofit organizations. And although I am sympathetic to what the Department of Labor is experiencing, I am not forgiving, because if they need to do a massive hiring, place individuals on independent phone units within their home, we've got to process these people. We have people that are in need of emergency assistance. One of the questions that I have here, and this is very important, and Mr. Morani, you may be able to join in as well on this particular question, but the individual states that as a property manager, what is the relief for landlords, since no dispossessories can be filed at this time? Being an elected official, I must be very impartial. And I will say that I have had calls and emails from many landlords saying that my rental units were a part of my household income. Please do not make me a landlord, or shall I say public housing, because I can't afford it during this time. For any individual that has a duly organized LLC that operates their rental properties as a business, and please feel free to verify this, Terry, you can qualify for PPE funding and secondary funding. Also, when the county has funds available, you can qualify. But you must operate as a business. If you've just gone out and bought rental units and you're renting them, I think I'm not sure if you're able to qualify. But if you operate as an organization that has a lease or agreement, then you can qualify for PPE as well as other secondary funding to subsidize the losses that you're suffering at this time. And I encourage both Ms. Dennison as well as Mr. Marani to answer and join in on that question.
Okay, I'll take a first crack at it. In terms of, you are right. You know, it has to be the nature. It has to be a business, not a, you know, kind of a side. Yeah. PPP may not fit as well just because, you know, are you employing people and covering, you know, wages, or do you give yourself wages? If you don't, maybe not as beneficial. A lot of times, the landlords will use idle because the rent is income, and they having endured economic injury as a result of the loss of that rental income. So that may be another avenue for them.
And Mr. Marani, your experience there, and also talk about other avenues, because you are like a wizard of sort that just sits there with a ton of knowledge that individuals who are landlords may wish to pursue during this time.
Yeah. So thank you for having me on the panel. The first bill that came out at the beginning of the year, when we had it, it was more leaning towards helping renters and not so much supporting landlords. And I think that the local and the state government has pretty much put the voice out and took it to the federal level, where they realized that we need to support our landlords that are in the community during these times as well. So the new legislation that's about to come out, one of the interesting segments of that, you know, they have 25 billion for renters, but that is part of assisting landlords through the renters. So they're going to have, on the local level, they'll have an application to fill out by the landlords that are looking to get reimbursed for their rents that are past due. In that application, there will be a column where they can go to their tenants and ask them to authorize a signature through which the state and the local departments can directly fund the past due balances along with the future rent. But this is only going to be supporting every 3 months. So every 3 months, the application has to be renewed. So I think that the federal government has heard from individuals and came out with a strategy where they are helping the renters along the side of helping the landlords. And I think that's a very good idea. The landlords out there shouldn't be thinking that the 25 billion are going just straight to the renters. The National Boards of Realtor did a survey in the last 9 months to discover how many landlords were basically getting paid. And it's interesting, you would think that, the ratio would be somewhere in 20-25%, but believe it or not, it was 64% landlords got paid on their rent. And, during the survey, they asked questions to the landlord, how are you able to retain your rent? And 64% of the landlords answered by offering payment plans to their tenants. This is not the time to argue, get upset, get mad with your renters. You need to be sympathetic, but at the same time, you've got bills to pay, which we all understand. So I think the landlord should look at this bill as a very positive, journey coming out, that they're going to get an opportunity to collect their past due, along with, if they can get their renter to sign on this application, they can actually get an auto draft every month for the next 12 months. The 25 billion also includes renters, supporting, the assistance for utility bill. But I personally feel that the first bill did not do justice to the landlord. And I think the second bill that's coming out, it's a very fair, and I think they've covered comprehensively the landlords. Um, the other advice that I can give the landlords, which I see every single day in my business, um, is the landlords are actually converting those properties into selling the properties. So they're finding out that this is a seller's market, and the value of the appreciation is there. And if they can somehow come up with an agreement with the tenant, they're able to do a sale, rent to purchase, through which the tenants are more favorable going that direction. So that's another piece of advice. But I feel that if you can fill this application out when it comes in as a landlord, show the copy of your lease, and then get your tenant to sign, you'd be on auto payment, and that would be amazing for all the landlords.
Absolutely. And thank you for breaking it down as you did. That's why I always appreciate you so much, because you always have the minute details and you just speak with such flow that you make it simple to understand. Um, so for that landlord that expressed the concern, look forward to this new bill. Now, have we already, or shall I say on the federal level, I don't think yet they began accepting those applications yet.
Not yet. I think we should see them anywhere between the next 45 to 60 days coming out.
And again, 45 to 60 days is a long time when you're in need.
Absolutely. And I have, my heart goes out to all the landlords out there, because I'm a landlord myself, and
Mhm.
I'm into the same shoes as they are. But the good thing is, this new program, you can actually even go back to your past due rent. So it's not saying that they will support you for the future rent. They're actually even helping you and assisting the landlords with the past due. So here's your opportunity, to get the assistance that you might need. Going to the other side, if you currently as a landlord have a mortgage on your property and it is an investment property, you need to pick up your mortgage statement. You need to see who the servicer is. You need to call that number. You need to tell them the situation you're in, and they will be happy to do forbearance, deferment. They are actually still supporting that in the servicing department. The only caveat to that is if you were to defer your mortgage, you're not going to be able to apply for refinancing. So, that's another thing. So if you think that this mortgage is a burden while the tenant is not paying you, go ahead and defer it, because when the federal assistance come our way, you'll be able to get the funds, and then you can just pay that back to the mortgage company.
And one other thing that during one of our last town halls, when we explored how to help individuals that have mortgages who may be in an adverse position, many people are familiar with a traditional refi, because most people on this call understand that we, in terms of our interest rate, is the lowest I think it's been that I can ever remember. Okay.
Yes, yes. I've been locking people in I1s for a 15-year. The rates I've never seen 1.875 for a 15-year and 2.5 for a 30-year. I ran into a landlord who was struggling with the same situation, and this is a prime example of how you can come out of this. His rent payment was $1,200 a month, and his mortgage payment was about $1,100 a month, and the tenant was struggling to pay the rent during this situation. And he reached out to me and said, look, I'm trying to find ways. The tenant and them came in agreement where the tenant can pay $600 every month until they can recoup from this situation. He actually did a 30-year refinance at a 2.5 rate, lowered his payment to 585, through which he's able to cope up with this situation. So sometimes you might have to go back, refi the property, and lower your payments in order to get the tenant to pay you how much they're paying you, so you can keep up with your bills. And that's another solution to this. This way, you get to keep your property, you get to keep up with your mortgage, lower your interest rate, and the tenant is paying you enough to cover the mortgage. So through which you're actually paying your property on its own.
Absolutely. Now, one other thing, because I want people to hear this, because of course we're all familiar with the traditional refinancing, where you are going to incur, of course, the cost associated with the refinance. But there are other ways for an individual who is in good standing, who wishes to take advantage strictly of the lower interest rate to request an adjustment. And you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Can you
Um,
please share that so that
Sure.
individuals understand
Sure.
it's not always necessary to do a traditional refinance to get a lower rate?
So typically, if you have a $200,000 mortgage on your property and you go to do a typical refinance, you're looking at a minimum closing cost of at least $2,800. The closing cost will consist of attorney fees, intangible taxes, underwriting fees, and consumers out there that do not want to spend the extra $3,000 out of their pocket or to roll into the new loan, the option is loan modification. You just pick up your phone, call your servicer who's currently servicing the loan, and you request them that you'd like to modify your loan internally, through which you don't have to go through the whole closing process again, through which you can lower your interest, you can lower your payments. Another option for you, if you're looking for excess funds and if you have built enough equity in your house, it's a home equity line of credit. That's another way to look at it. Long as you have equity sitting in the house, you can utilize that. Um, there's so many options out there, but every individual's scenario is different, and you got to imply what fits your needs, because in the situation where I am, the tenant that I have, he's in DeKalb, and his rent was 1,300, and he reached out to me 7 months ago and said, look, times are really hard, but I really want to pay you in good faith. And I said, look, I just asked him one question. I said, I want to help you and support you because you've helped me and paid my bills on time for the last 2 years. What can I do for you? And he says, I could afford to pay you $800 a month. And I said, we can make a payment arrangement, not a problem. So you just got to find what works for you. And at the end of the day, you've got to remember that we're dealing with people and we got to treat them the way we want to be treated. So just because they're in a situation financially, and you want to make sure, because you look, at this point, the Lord has blessed you to be a landlord, but once upon a time, you were a tenant and you started somewhere. So you've got to remember that and have that heart of love and affection at the same time, try to figure out a solution to the problem.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that. Because as a general rule, if you want to avoid those closing costs and you are in good standing, I believe it's about usually the equivalent of a mortgage payment rather than that you would pay, as opposed to all of the additional cost that's associated with a refi.
One last thing I'd like to add to that for our senior citizens who have joined on this call today and people that are age of 65 and older, if you actually have a lot of equity sitting in your house, and if you still have a regular typical mortgage, there's something out there called a reverse mortgage, which if you don't have a lot of knowledge, you need to look it up. A reverse mortgage is where you give the property to the lender, and through the equity of the house, they will actually make the payments for you and you can be payment free. People get afraid and scared of reverse mortgages, but at these times I've seen very much people use reverse mortgages to their favor.
Absolutely. And there is a question here as to where can the landlord find the application that is associated with the new package that would allow them to seek, for lack of better words, I'd call it the gap funding for tenants who have been unable to pay their rent. I will have on my website, and Allison, I know that you're on the call. Allison is my district coordinator. The entire packet on my website, if we haven't already brought it live. And I will also send out that application once it is made available in my newsletter. So make sure you're receiving my newsletter because I have begun the construction of an entire COVID-19 resource center on my website that will have all of these documents that we're discussing here. I'm going to go back to my list. Okay. Is student loan relief included in the relief bill? Yes, it is. I know that there has been a deferment placed upon student loans, and there is a discussion on the federal level of the forgiveness of loans. And Mr. Morani, I see you nodding,
I
which
can,
means I know that you are very familiar.
yeah.
So I'm going to allow you to respond to that particular question.
So the first bill that came out provided student relief for all the students out there that have existing loans with a deferment program of up to 5 years. So you can really defer your loan up to December 31st, 2025. President Biden, when he came in the office, he actually also emphasized on deferring up till September of 2021 with a very nominal payment plan. I had a candidate today who applied for a home loan, and I was helping her through the process. She had $248,000 worth of student loans. Now, the law says, the Fannie Mae and the Freddie Mac guidelines for housing says you have to apply 1% of that student loan towards her debt to income ratio. If I would have applied that, she would have never qualified for the home loan. But through President Biden's assistance, she was able to call SBA, and they were able to provide her a letter with a very nominal payment of $86 a month, through which she's able to purchase this home now. So if you are in this situation where you're applying for a home loan and you have a lot of student loans sitting on your account, and the lender is counting 1% of that, call right away, tell them I want to make this into an active payment plan, and the payment will be very nominal, through which you will be amazed. A $248,000 student loan with a payment of $86 a month.
That is incredible information. So the actual term active, I need you to repeat that because I'm going to include this in my newsletter.
Yes. So if you have active student loan, and if you're trying to set up a payment plan, right now, President Biden has a deferment plan where you could call them and tell them, I want to make payment arrangements. And a loan size as of $100,000, a payment could be $25 a month. Because when you apply for a home loan and when somebody pulls your credit and they see all these student loans, the lender will just tell you straight up, if they don't have a knowledge, they'll be like, you don't qualify. And you'll be in a panic mode. I'm helping a young lady right now through this. And if you have to convert the deferment into a payment plan, don't be afraid of doing that, because your payment will be so nominal through which you'll be able to qualify for the loan. Now, again, the deferment is good all the way till 2025. If you're not in a situation where you're looking to buy a home or refinance a property, then you should just let the deferment be there for you. But if you ever have to convert the deferment into a payment plan between now and September 30th, it's a good opportunity to do that.
And thank you for that, because I know several young people that honestly, for lack of better words, I don't think, and when I hear of a young lady that has $250,000 in student loans, what by chance is her profession? What did she study?
Probably this young woman that I met, she actually was she was a PhD. She was a teacher. She was in education.
An educator that spent $250,000. Okay.
Yeah. I ran into a medical doctor who had $505,000 of student loans on his report. So we worked this same solution out. But again, having the wisdom and knowledge of knowing that this is possible and it's doable, I think, I think it's all about access to resources at the end of the day. And I think we learn from each other. So if we share these kind of information and these kind of panels and we get the wisdom out there, I'm sure there are many people in the situation where they're saying, hey, you know what? I didn't know I can take the deferment all the way till 2025. They're worrying about every year to year. I mean, the CARES Act clearly stated that you can defer up to 5 years if you wanted to. But again, I think, especially in the situation where students that came out, got a degree, and all these student loans, should not stress and utilize either Mr. Biden's, President Biden's law that he passed, about extending till September 31st or use the deferment from the CARES Act all the way till December 31st, 2025.
And thank you so much for that. I'm going to certainly ensure, because I know that there is, on the federal level, discussion about forgiveness of up to $40,000 in student loan debt by current President Biden.
Yeah.
But I was unfamiliar with. And that is why, to those of you that are on this call, it is so important to have conversations. And people literally perish from a lack of knowledge. And sharing this type of information so that we can go out, share this with your neighbors, share this with young people so that they understand. Because I know young people who literally cannot afford to purchase a home because of their student loan debt. So I am now going to take it upon myself to ensure that everyone to whom I have access is fully aware of this program. I'm now going to go back over to my list of questions. We will mark out our student loan question. I think we've already covered the landlord question here. This question is, how does the relief bill affect Georgia's SNAP program? And what are the qualifications for receiving assistance? SNAP, to my knowledge, and feel free because we're not all knowing, but SNAP is a completely different program. And it's my understanding that those requirements remain as they are. They are unaffected by what we have here through CARES Act, as well as the Coronavirus Relief Plan. Is there anyone else that has knowledge here who can speak knowledgeably concerning that particular question?
I have a little bit of information I can give, Commissioner. I think that, as far as I know, under the CARES Act, and I think under the supplement as well, they're still maxing out the household benefits.
Mhm.
So I think, for a household of one in Georgia, that's $194 a month, as opposed to, there would be times where you would see folks who would qualify for like $15 a month in food stamp in SNAP benefits. So I think that, I think the work requirements are also still suspended. So I think that if you thought that you might not qualify for SNAP benefits, it is worth checking out, because you might be surprised.
Okay, so let's make that call. Let's go direct to the source, because let's not leave anything in the field as we're gleaning. This individual has stated, I did not receive a stimulus check. How can I get my payment? Now, it's my understanding that would you contact the, I don't know, who would they contact if they did not receive and were eligible? I do know also, to everyone on this call, if you did not receive your stimulus check, you can actually file it on your tax return to receive, shall I say, credit for that amount. But I'm assuming, is this through the U.S. Treasury? So would that be through the Internal Revenue Service that an individual would actually call?
They have a 1-800 number for this line. Again, I don't know what the hold time is, but I can share the number here. It's 1-800-919-9835.
And I am going to go back and place this for all panelists. Give me that number one more time. That's 800.
800-919-9835. And the department is called IRS Economic Impact Payment.
IRS Economic
Impact Payment Department.
Impact Payment Department.
Yep.
Allison, please make sure. Great. Actually, you've already gotten it up there before I could. Let's make sure that we hold on to this. And I will include this phone number in my next newsletter for anyone who has not received their stimulus check and they wish to call and check on the status. But again, I do know that you can receive it as a credit when you are filing your taxes.
The citizens that haven't received it, they probably haven't checked their gross income. They're all making over 200 grand right now.
And, I sit here and I do know that for a husband and wife, I believe it may be 150
150, yeah.
is the threshold,
That's right.
shall we say, and as an individual, I believe it's 75,000. So if your income is 75,000
Yeah.
or more as an individual or as a couple, 150 or more, you will not receive a stimulus check.
There's one little thing I like to add to it. So they also mentioned in the bill that if the funds are still accessible or left over after everybody has got their stimulus check, they will stretch the income threshold to 198,000 for a joint couple, just only if the funds are available.
Okay, well, there we have it. So make sure you are qualified, and that's, so that's not the reason that you have not received. Here's a question here. I was laid off from my job because of COVID-19 and cannot pay my rent. Can I receive emergency rental assistance? What steps should I take to apply? Absolutely, you can receive funds. The biggest encumbrance right now is finding agencies that have funds available. Because we have expended, I know, here in the county, our local resources until which time we actually receive the monies from the federal government so that we can begin round 2 of allocations. It's not that you're not qualified, but by and large, most agencies have expended funds. What is the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program? And how can I apply to get assistance coverage for me and my family? The Pandemic Unemployment Assistance is literally it lays out the groundwork to receive unemployment compensation. And who feels best qualified to outline what those parameters are?
I can speak to it, yes. So the pandemic uninsurance, the PUA benefits are specifically geared toward individuals who don't qualify for traditional state unemployment. So it's geared toward people who are gig workers or self-employed, or who didn't earn enough in the preceding, the way the Department of Labor does it is they do a look back over the previous 4 quarters. And if your wages are above a certain threshold, then you qualify for regular state unemployment and you get that. If they're below, then you would qualify for PUA. And basically, if you made a single dollar in those preceding 4 quarters, you will qualify for PUA. And so they are looking at self-employment, they're looking at gig workers. They're also looking, it's also available for folks who are unemployed specifically due to COVID for a variety of reasons, who might not otherwise qualify, or who may not be able to go back to work because of COVID. So, for example, if you have children at home for whom you have the primary care, if you're caring for someone who's sick, things like that, then you may qualify for PUA. And the way it works is that you'll apply for unemployment in the usual way. And then the Department of Labor will make a determination that you don't qualify for state unemployment, and they'll either send you an email, or when you go into your UI portal on the website, there'll be a link that will appear that will instruct you to apply for PUA. And that's how you do it.
Great. And thank you so much for that. I see one individual here in the chat that has indicated that due to the adverse effects of COVID, their credit has tanked because they were unable to make monthly payments, and they were denied the opportunity to refinance their home. Even independent of Mr. Morani responding, you're going to need to meet the minimum requirements. But don't forget that here in DeKalb, we have Operation Hope. September of 2019, we cut the ribbon on Hope DeKalb. And for those who receive the newsletter, I always go back to that because that's the easiest way for me to convey information quickly. if you will call that office, they will work with you to help you minimize the adverse effects to your credit, because you can place on your credit profile statements. And I truly believe when I look at the state of America and what many people have suffered and how many continue to wait, because, you know, most people are one paycheck away from homeless. We have dealt with COVID now since March. Since March, people have not been able to pay their mortgage, to honestly purchase food in many instances. We have to look at, on the federal level, credit, as far as I'm concerned, and how we score people. Because to me, it is a double travesty to adversely affect people that are already at their wits' end because they plain and simply did not have resources. But again, you must qualify in order to be in a position to refinance, but do reach out to Hope, DeKalb, and they will assist you with your credit repair. Let's see what else we have here. I have a small business owner here in Stone Mountain in their 3rd year of existence. How can I get assistance during this time, since the first SBA loan just assisted me with $1,000, stating that the business is still new. I'm still suffering financially, and I cannot afford to go for a bank loan this time. Ms. Dennison, I think that's probably going to be better suited for you to answer. Yes. As to what you would advise this individual.
Okay, I'm thinking with the 1,000, that was probably the grant that was available as part of the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program before. I would say probably you might want to start with one of our micro lenders, like Access to Capital for Entrepreneurs, and I'll put this in the chat. And also Lift Fund, they're community development financial institutions that could possibly provide loans, a little more flexibility because of the nature of those organizations. That may be a good place to start in terms of looking at funding.
And thank you so much for that. Because at this point, you know, everyone is in need. Many people are in need, but the resources are few and far between. For anyone who desires to contact my office, we have an entire spreadsheet that lists various agencies, including one that I see on the call here tonight, the Africa's Children Fund. Although they do mission work in Africa, they do domestic work here in DeKalb County with assisting individuals who are in need. And Mr. Victor and Baba, I'd like to say to you, thank you. I know that personally, I provided you with funding, and you have served as a pass-through for many organizations to disseminate funds to individuals who need rent, mortgage, utility, as well as food assistance. And I thank you for that. So if you will contact our office, I will provide for you an entire spreadsheet of organizations that potentially have assistance. And when I say potentially, many of the wells have run dry and the coffers are empty until which time we receive this second round of funding. But I always send it along because sometimes, independent of the county, they receive additional funding from agencies that may allocate to them. So you never know. I know most recently, the Urban League had funding available when no one else did. And they were able to assist several individuals. And lastly, the Hank Stewart Foundation, of which I provided approximately $150,000. He was also amongst the last through the funding that I provided to have resources available for rent, mortgage, and utility assistance. But feel free to contact our office and we will send along that sheet, and you are free to reach out to those nonprofit organizations. At this time, I would like to allow everyone, as it is 7:20, to have any closing remarks that they would like to leave. I see here, does a forbearance program exist in DeKalb? Ms. Hines, when you say a forbearance program, I'm not sure what you mean. I did see someone ask a question concerning your taxes. If you are unable to pay your taxes, DeKalb County is not going to assess penalties and so forth. You can contact, and this is the part of it I don't like, you must be delinquent first, but by now you are, if you did not have the funds, and we will set up a payment plan with you and or defer those taxes. Does a forbearance program exist in DeKalb? Not sure in what capacity you're asking, Ms. Hines, but if you care to restate your question and or contact us directly, that would be absolutely fine. And Allison, make sure we list the phone number to our office, or most importantly, the email, because once we have emails, I'm able to keep everyone on the chain, and that works so much better because you have a fully, duly authorized document of the chain of command and the discussions that you had. So at this time, I'm going to begin with you, Ms. Dennison, and allow you to provide any closing remarks or any information that you feel our panel and our guest should be aware of.
Yes, I've actually just put into the chat 2 shortcuts on our website that can really lay out in more detail what's available under the new legislation to continue to assist businesses during this time.
Thank you for that. If that is all, then I'm now going to come over to Ms. Rossetti and ask for any final and closing statements that may help individuals that are a part of this conversation.
Yes, I would say that please, if you're having a legal issue that you think legal aid might be able to help you with, if you're having issues with your landlord, or if you're having issues getting unemployment, or with really any civil matter that is not a criminal matter and not personal injury, it is worth reaching out to us. Our main number in DeKalb County is 404-377-0701. You can also go to atlantalegalaid.org and submit an online application. We are available. We are all working, and we want very much to help you. So please reach out.
And thank you so much. Ms. Rossetti, I know that your office has been extremely busy because of the extreme need that is out there. And I want to say to you that personally, if there are any resources that I can provide you to expand your legal team and those that are on the front line of helping DeKalb County residents, if you will make me aware when I have discretionary funds, I will do so. Because I know there are a lot of agencies right now that are working extremely hard, and you do not have the financial resources you need to expand your team. And again, my heart goes out to individuals who have been waiting for 9 months or longer to have their claims processed by our labor department. That just absolutely makes no sense to me. And someone has to be accountable, because leadership starts from the top down. And whomever is in charge needs to do whatever is necessary to ensure that they are able to process the people of the state of Georgia. And I don't care if that requires the intervention of Governor Kim. But again, oftentimes these things end up in your door because you have to fight based on the adverse condition that people are placed in, but for agencies not doing their job. So thank you for what you do. And of course, Mr. Marani, who is just a dear friend, a wealth of knowledge. At this time, any closing statements from you?
All I can tell in the closing remarks, Commissioner, is that these times are difficult, but I pray that all citizens stay safe, safe, healthy, and protect our communities by following the guidelines from CDC, because as so many loved ones are passing away during these COVID times, we want to ensure the safety first. Health is the biggest blessing to citizens. Yes, we are facing financial difficulties in our businesses, in our personal lives, in our day-to-day operations. But if you're healthy and you've got roof over your head, you've got shelter, and you wake up and you see the sunlight, and that's a biggest blessing. We as citizens have always noticed that we come out better in situations like this. This makes us more stronger. So I would only tell everybody to hang in there and focus on your health, focus on your loved ones. And these are the times, if you know that you need help, you need to ask, because if you don't ask, you don't get. Help doesn't come at your door. If you're struggling to pay your next month's bill, you need to plan ahead of time. Um, and and this might be a time to consolidate and start living in larger families together. You can move back into your mother's house and live together and cut down on expenses, and not only support your seniors, but at the same time, so this is the time to consolidate. This is the time to revise things. These are the times to understand that we as a community have to come together and help any way possible. But at the same time, change is what you need to be willing to make when times of in these circumstance. And if you can overcome this, you can only stronger on the other side when all this surpasses us. But again, if you are in a home and your interest rate is more than 3% and you haven't financed yet, this is your last opportunity, kind of, in the next 60 days to get that done. But if you have any issues, any problems, I'm happy to help. Doesn't have to relate to business, it could be personal. I'm available at the service of the DeKalb citizens, and I'm there to support all of you. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to serve the community along with you.
Well, and thank you so much. And one of it is interesting that you would say that it is time for families to consider living in larger units, and it is time that we become more reasonable. And that is a really good conversation, and it's a different conversation because culturally, what you see in many instances, and this is true, you find many different cultures that come together more, while some do not. And sometimes it's not best to operate as an island unto oneself when you find yourself in an adverse position. So your statement there particularly resonates with me, because it's important, if we're going to come out of this successfully, for us to make wise decisions at this time. So please consider all options. Know that you are not in this alone. Do be aware that the only reason we have not opened up additional funding through DeKalb is because we are now waiting for the second round. We have literally expended the funds that were given in the initial CARES Act funding, and we are now waiting for the second round of stimulus. Continue to receive our newsletter. For small businesses, do go online. We have the SBA website. Read carefully your options with EIDL as well as the PPE, and think very critically, because a 1% interest rate, if you are in need and you have the ability, is not out of line if you were to seek a business loan that is currently at 5%. So again, thank you all for your time. It's now 7:30. We will bring this to a close, but I'm here to serve. If you need me, feel free to contact our office. And to my team, both Dr. Leah Davis, as well as Allison Slocum and Jonathan J.P. Phillips, who is out there. We now have a van. We have gone mobile. So if you need PPE equipment, we will make a contact-free delivery to your mailbox. If you will send us your address, we are here to work with you, and I expect to see us come out of this better and stronger. And may God continue to bless each and every one of you. To those who are panel members, thank you, because you always answer when I reach out, and that means a great deal to me. I do not take your time nor your talents for granted. Thank you, and may God bless each of you, and may God bless DeKalb.
God bless you. Take care. Have a good night.
Thank
Take
you so
care.
much.